Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me. I have been so excited to share this video with you. And in case you're new to this channel or new to me in general on YouTube, my name's Emily. My main YouTube channel is youtube.com/EmilyNoel83. It's known as Beauty Broadcast, so it's mainly beauty stuff. But I do come over here and do the occasional everyday life related video. Most recently, it's been a lot of pregnancy and baby related things here. But I am an everyday person. I am not a doctor. I am not a lactation consultant. I don't have any sort of, medical title. I'm not a nurse. So please take this information for what it is. It is an everyday woman's advice on breastfeeding given the very specific challenges that I've dealt with. A lot of the things that helped me as I struggled with nursing were the tidbits that I found just here and there on the internet as I was looking for help. So I'm hoping I can be that person to someone else out there, but I'm not trying to take the place of a doctor or a trained lactation consultant who really knows the ins and outs of all things medical. I am a mother of two, which seems kind of strange to say still. I have a 2-year-old. She's going to be 2.5 very soon, and her name's Belle, and most recently I gave birth to baby Eve, and she was born January 9th, 2017. So on this day that I'm shooting this video, she's exactly 2 months old. So that's where everything stands. In terms of my nursing breastfeeding history, I nursed Belle for a total of around 17 months, and the first 3 months of nursing her were very painful. It was around the 3-month mark that things started to come around, and I noticed a lot of improvement with the process. Very long story short there, I'll probably expand on that. But with Eve, I've been nursing her since birth now, and she is 2 months old. And my struggle period of nursing with her only lasted like a couple of weeks. And I do attribute some of that, at least some of it, to the things that I learned the first time around. A lot of it's things I learned the hard way, thus the title of this video. I guess having a little more background on what I went through with Belle, nursing her, will help you understand a little bit better the things I've gone through. But right from the get-go, I had so much pain when I nursed her. And I'm not just saying like something that hurt for a little bit or something that just hurt when I first latched her on or something like that. It was toe-curling pain throughout the whole duration of when I was nursing her. So let's say I nursed her for 20 minutes at a time, every 2 hours, if not more often than that. It was so much pain. And it's just really hard, I think, mentally and emotionally. You're dealing with this new baby, you're trying to do everything right, you're trying to do the best for them, but at the same time you're dealing with all this pain, and you can't help but not feel very positive and not very happy about those times when you are feeding them. Now, I'm not trying to scare anybody by telling you this story, because there are many people who have no issues breastfeeding. I mean, when I talked to my mom and I was like, did you have any struggles nursing me? And she's like, no, not at all. It just happened very naturally, very easily. And it's my hope for all of you that that is the experience you have or have had. And then there are people who may have struggles way beyond what I've dealt with, and things that have driven them to, go to formula. And it's completely your choice. We've all got specific challenges. I am not here, and none of us should be here to judge anyone else on the decisions they're making. We've all got our reasons, and also we've all got different children. Even within one family, no two kids may nurse the same or give you the same nursing breastfeeding experience. So keep all that in mind. But with Belle, it was just a real struggle. There were times where I got very down on myself and felt like I was doing it wrong. There were many times where I felt like she was crying as I was struggling to get her latched, and then like in weak sleep-deprived moments I was crying too, and Tyler's sitting there thinking, I don't know what to do, how to handle this. I would say what kept me going was that she kept gaining weight. Even from her first doctor's appointment, I could see that she was thriving, she was growing, doing well, and I thought, if I can just stick it out a little longer, for whatever reason, I might find this tip or that tip, or maybe have an occasional moment where I thought I was having some kind of breakthrough, and it just kept me in the game that little bit longer. And then before I knew it, after about 3 months, it started to subside, the pain, and I was just feeling a lot more confident with things. Part of this this, I do believe, is just the growth of a child. Newborn babies have tiny mouths, and a specific struggle I feel I have, and yes, there's going to be some overshares here. You clicked a video about breastfeeding, so don't blame me. But I'm not sure what type of species God intended me to nurse with my nipples, but it seems to be something much larger than a newborn baby. When you're nursing, it's recommended, it's always advised that the baby gets their mouth onto not just the nipple, but as much of the areola, the area surrounding the nipple, as possible. And that is for the mother's comfort, but also so when the baby is nomming on there, they're putting pressure on the proper areas to stimulate the flow of milk. When the baby has a tiny mouth and you have a large nipple and nipple area, it's really hard, and it can be so uncomfortable. And sometimes I really do believe that the growth of that child, the growth of their mouth, that can have a big effect on your comfort in nursing them. With Belle, not only did I have that kind of obstacle going, but she was a very aggressive nurser. She sucked really hard. She was always instead of just kind of gradually and gently hanging her mouth open so I could get in there and get the best latch possible, she was always kind of like this, like chomping at the bit, just ready to go. And when you're physically not able to fit a lot in their mouth, you will inevitably deal with some bleeding, some scabbing, some issues where you're thinking, how am I ever going to come back from this, and how am I going to continue to nurse this baby? I will tell you, I continued nursing the baby all throughout. I never took a break from it. I really didn't pump a whole lot either. Looking back, I think that could have helped me if I did that more. But around 3 months, I think I had figured out some things. My child grew a little bit, which may be a discouraging thing to hear, like, oh, I gotta wait till they actually get bigger for this to get better. But I do think that really makes an impact. And I think I had also just come to some realizations in terms of positioning the child the way I was going about nursing the baby. I made some changes that really helped things. So that's what I'm going to get into as I go through my kind of list of tips I learned the hard way. But for Eve, more recently, I did have pain the first couple weeks, and I don't know if part of that is your body just getting reacclimated to the fact that there is a human being chomping on your nipples. At first it's very sensitive, and then it kind of gets back to maybe being not quite so sensitive. Also, Eve has a much larger mouth and ability to open really wide compared to Belle, and she's a little bit more relaxed in terms of nursing. Not quite so chompy, just a little more gentle in general. And I do remember my doctor saying, like, when I went in for I think it was my 6-week appointment after having Belle, and I told him, I've been having some pain. And he kind of mentioned the fact that your nipples aren't really used to doing this yet. Like, they will eventually not be so sensitive to what's happening. And that gave me a glimmer of hope as well, having that info. But number one thing that I think is important to know is to get a nursing bra that's big enough. And I say this first because a lot of times people are preparing for the baby and getting these things before the baby's born. And the nursing bra that I remember I had before Belle, I probably still have it, and if I do, I'll get it out and show you a picture. It was not nearly big enough, number one. And number two, I felt like the style of the bra for me just was not working. It was the kind that when it unclipped, it still had a little kind of strappy thing going down here. And your boobs are going to vary so much in size, just even over the course of a day, especially in those early days when your milk comes in and you become kind of engorged and things are really big, and then you've nursed a lot and it's not seeming quite so big. So you've got to accommodate the largest that your boobs will be, okay? I find the bras that work for me are ones that are in the extra large size. And let me tell you, after the first week with Belle, the first purchase I needed to make after that week, the first Target run that was involved, I had to get in there and get a nursing bra that fit me. And so I got something that was bigger and also didn't have that strap cutting across, because that strap, not only is that maybe uncomfortable, but if you've got anything applying pressure to the breast in some spot, it can cause a plugged duct, and I've dealt with that more than a few times. Make sure your nursing bras, your nursing tank tops are not feeling like they're kind of cutting you off in any certain area. It's not that they've got to be like saggy and loose, but it's just got to be like a comfortable fit that's not too tight. As I alluded to earlier, babies don't necessarily know how to latch themselves perfectly. Mouth size and nipple size don't always match up. Contrary to, some of the breastfeeding classes, if you've gone through any of those like I did, you come away feeling like babies just come out knowing what to do, and you watch the videos and they just, you know, find their way to the nipple and everything's just this hunky-dory environment. I'm talking about breastfeeding. Questions, comments, concerns?
I prefer solid food.
With both of my kids, after having them, I was able to nurse them. I was able to get them, you know, latched on right away after they were born. And, you know, you can see things are kind of going how they're supposed to. But a lot of times I hear people like complaining that things weren't working once they left the hospital. It's like you're able to kind of hold it together and get the help you need from nurses and stuff while you're there. But once you get home and you're in the thick of it and you're on your own and you're not getting sleep and you're trying to feed this baby who's crying all the time, that's where the hard stuff really kicks in. If you are one who has dealt with the struggle like I have of feeling like your areola area has grown substantially after being pregnant, which what's up with that adaptation? I've talked about this before, but why does that have to grow so much if it's really expected to go fit into your teeny tiny baby's mouth? I have experimented over time with a lot of different holds when nursing. You know, you can just cradle the child and do it the way that you might just envision in your head of how the baby is held right here in nursing. Using nursing pillows like a boppy pillow, I've got a couple of those. Those can be good, especially, you know, when that baby is so small. But if you are feeling like, okay, I've really got to go to some effort here to get that nipple sort of compressed, as the nurses who worked with me, I remember with Belle, they talked about having to actually, you know, maneuver things in such a way that you're almost compressing the size of the nipple to get it in the baby's mouth. If you're really having to work at it, this is the way I think you want to position the baby. You want to have a pillow over here on the side. Like, let's say you're sitting in a chair with a couple of arms, prop like a bed pillow sized pillow right over here. Baby is just laying there, their head's propped up. I also like to kind of see the child be at a bit of an angle like this. Sometimes those other pillows that lay them totally flat, I don't know, something about that, I just see it not really aiding in digestion as much as keeping them a little bit angled. And then you're going to have one hand devoted to the boob, okay? Holding it, you're controlling its direction. You are able to, as you're getting it into baby's mouth, you're pointing it up toward their nose, so at least they might make the attempt to open wider to like reach the nipple. And you're somewhat feeling like you're squeezing the nipple a bit more down to size, if possible. You're gonna get the nipple itself in there, and you're trying to get as much surrounding area in their mouth as well. So the best word I can come up with is you kind of compressing a bit. Now this hand, or you know, switch this in reverse when you're on the opposite side, but with this hand, I'm using that to actually drop baby's chin down a little bit with my thumb. I'm sticking my thumb in the area between their lower lip and chin, and there's not a lot of space there, but there is some. And as you are getting that baby latched on, drop their jaw a little bit. And I'm not putting tons of pressure, not straining them in any way, but you can actually have some control over the wideness of their mouth opening by doing this. This was a total game changer for me with Belle. And this way of doing it, having this hand free to do that, and then get them on, and then you've got this hand free to like cradle them and hold them close to you. This hand is still, sorry, but it's holding the boob like this. So you never feel like they're really pulling down on you or hanging off of you or anything like that. And then of course that pillow is there to support them and keep them right there at the right level. But if your child is not opening wide for you, and with Belle, like I said, it was like I just needed something that would slow her down because she was in this kind of a mode a lot. And it's like, how am I going to just, you know, get in there? You've got to slow them down. So applying just gentle pressure, pulling down lightly and gently on their chin will let you get in there a little bit better at least. And then as time goes on, it's like that becomes their trigger to know what to do. All I would have to do is just kind of touch that area, not even feel like I was gently pulling down, but just touch it and she would open wider. And then eventually you don't really need that trick at all, and they've become accustomed to know that they've got to open wide to get on there. But that hold, that way of nursing, and I still, like, I wouldn't have to nurse that way even now with Eve. And if I'm outside somewhere and I don't have armrests and I don't have the pillow, you know, I'm gonna just hold her, cradle her that way and do it the standard way that you would imagine many people to nurse a child. But when I'm at home, just kind of by habit, that's what I do. I've got the pillow on either side, and then I've got boob in one hand. I've got the other hand free to kind of control baby's mouth a little bit, open it wider if need be, and then get them on. Next tip, things can get messy, especially the early days. You're producing all this milk, and if you're struggling to get that good latch, or if the baby keeps coming off, it's important to simply dry yourself off. Make sure the nipple is dry and baby's mouth and everything surrounding their mouth is dried off. Because I was noticing this with Eve. On my left side, for whatever reason, she had a hard time getting on and staying on. Right side, it was like, oh, she just prefers this side so much more, I guess, because she'd get on, she'd stay on for the duration of the feeding. I'd feel like she completely emptied the breast, and then we were good. But over here, for whatever reason, it was kind of an on and off thing. I wondered if the milk was letting down a little bit too fast for her, but we would end up with some messy situations where I've got this burp cloth under here and I keep trying to get her on again, and then I just stopped and realized I think she's slipping off, and that's why she keeps coming off and can't get, you know, a good suction around the nipple. And it's tough because you're feeling like, okay, I'm dripping milk, I don't want to be losing this milk, we're trying to get this done as quickly as possible, and you kind of get stressed. And these are the times where I feel like I notice myself practically sweating because I'm trying to get this kid on, I'm trying to get everything to work. But stop, slow down, take a deep breath, dry yourself off, dry baby's mouth off, try that latch again, and I think it has much better odds of working if everything is dry, because sometimes it just amounts to slippage, I think. Also, in terms of the mechanics of feeding, with the method I told you about, how you're kind of cupping the breast with one hand and you're holding baby up to it with the other, make sure you don't get into a habit of like leaning on the boob, squeezing it too hard for, you know, a long amount of time. Obviously, you might need to compress the nipple a bit to get it in there, but there can be no like death grips on yourself. Same concept as wearing the nursing bra that's too tight. You can be cutting yourself off and causing clogged ducts that way. So gentle is the name of the game. You don't want to be squeezing anything. You don't want to be leaning up on anything, because that will hinder the flow of milk in some way. Another thing that I think can cause plugged ducts is maybe not realizing that you're not totally emptying one side before moving on to the other side. So it's just important to be mindful of the process, because I think as time goes on and you maybe have mastered getting the baby latched and you're not dealing with the pain anymore, the things that can come sneak up on you are when you're doing this mindlessly and then you find out, oh, I was leaning on that, or I was squeezing that and I didn't think I was, or I forgot what side I was on last and then this one didn't end up getting emptied out. So just keep your head in the game somewhat, even if it does get better pain-wise, and make sure you're not doing something that's giving you a plugged duct. Another thing that really helps, side note here, is this breastfeeding app that I have, and to this day, I still use it. I used it the entire time I nursed Belle for all those months. I'll have to look up the exact name, but it's like a timer basically for each side. It's a great way to keep track of what side you were on last, how much time they spent, if you should return to that side before going to the other. It's great for just tracking how much they've been feeding all together, and there are other things you can keep track of on there as well. Nice for the early days when you're trying to be able to tell your doctor about bowel movements and wet diapers and all those things. I don't really track anything else currently but the nursing on there, but it offers a lot more. Lanolin ointment. Lancino ointment. I'm sure other brands make it, but I use the Lancino brand, and this is a must-have. And the thing that changed the game for me, the thing that I kind of learned the hard way on this, was use a really generous amount of this stuff. If you have the slightest bit of feeling like you are irritated on the nipple area, or something starting to get a little raw there or whatever, use quite a bit. Use a generous amount. And I can't remember where I found that tidbit. I feel like it was on the brand's like maybe FAQs of their website or somewhere. And it was specifically advised to use a generous amount. Before, I was applying it kind of like the way I would apply, let's say, Vaseline to my lips, thin layer, no more, no less. And let me tell you, once I started applying a lot more of the Lancino after a feeding, I felt like the healing of the nipples improved leaps and bounds. And that's definitely a tip that I took with me for now baby Eve after feeding her, and I wasn't even having as much pain as I had with Belle, but in those early days I'm like, I'm not holding back on this, and I used quite a bit. But the way I would kind of go about feeding when you're dealing with pain and irritation to the nipple is after you're done, if you have any excess drippage of milk anywhere, you can express some. Let some breast milk be on the nipple, the irritated nipple. Let that area kind of air dry. And then I like to use the breast pads from Medela. They're great for being, I think, the softest I've used, period. They're nicely absorbent when you're dealing with some leakage. And so I make sure I'd have those in my nursing bra. And when I'm ready to close up shop, so to speak, I put on the generous amount of Lancino ointment and then click, we're done. And that stuff is safe for the baby to come back and nurse on. If you've got some on your nipple, it's not gonna hurt them. And last tip that I learned the hard way in regards to plugged ducts. First off, how do you even know that you've got one? Well, it feels like sometimes a lump. There have been times where it's felt like it was very, very close to the surface and I could feel just a small lump or maybe a large lump. Other times I feel like the pain seemed like it was coming more from like deeper inside. But it feels kind of like pressure, some pain, and just tenderness overall. And from what I understand, that comes from maybe a situation where you've obstructed the flow of milk in some way, or you haven't fully emptied the breast, and then you get plugged up and it can be pretty uncomfortable. But what helps it heal is heat. If you can get in the shower, and especially if you got one of those shower heads that can come off and you can really target it, but either way, in the shower, that warm, moist heat on the area, that will help a lot. And I'm talking prior to nursing. So it's kind of like warming yourself up before you nurse or before you pump. Pumping has really helped clear some plug duct situations for me because, you know, sometimes maybe the baby wasn't real hungry to stay on there and nurse just absolutely as much as they needed to, as much as you needed them to in that moment to kind of help clear things. So sometimes with pumping, I mean, depending on how well you respond to the pump, that can sometimes help ensure that all of your milk is getting out. But warming yourself up first, either in the shower, or they make these great little heating pads. Again, this is Lancino brand, not sponsored, just pretty much bought everything they had out of necessity. But these little heating pads, you can just heat them up in the microwave and, you know, just right there on the boob, and that will warm up the area. It can help soften what's plugged up, and then I think you will find you have much better luck with that all clearing out the next time you pump or feed. Again, not a medical professional here, just speaking from what I think is going on with me in my personal experiences, but I think sometimes it doesn't always clear immediately, and it might take a couple of nursing sessions or a couple of pumping sessions to really feel like you're clearing yourself out, but heat helps speed it along. Also, sometimes your plug duct has been cleared, but you still feel a little sore afterwards. I think that's definitely possible. You know, I've dealt with this several times even with Eve so far, and you're pretty darn sure everything's out. You don't feel the same little bump that you felt before, but yet you still feel some soreness. And I think sometimes it may be 6 to 12 hours before I feel like, okay, there's zero tenderness there anymore. But there is a difference between just having a plugged duct and having full-on symptoms of mastitis. I have not had mastitis. I have nothing that has happened with me painful breastfeeding wise has sent me to the hospital, but I will link below to symptoms of mastitis because that's much more serious, and that's something that you definitely want to, you know, make sure you get cleared up very promptly. But guys, that's my advice on breastfeeding as it stands right now. Those are some tips that definitely help me out. I am not a pro, I don't know everything, but you don't have to be a medical professional to be one who nurses, so you're inevitably going to come up with some tricks here and there, some things that have helped you out. And hopefully, you know, if you're watching this and you're pregnant, congratulations. Maybe just save this video back somewhere, pull it out on a rainy day when you're nursing and in pain, and I think this information may hit you in a completely different way when you're like in the thick of it. That's the way it was for me. I could read every tip in the book before I had the baby and think, okay, yep, this is all gonna be great, all right, and then I found myself in the thick of it and I was searching for answers, and everything that I heard like came to me in a different way than it did before I had the baby. So just a thought there, but thank you guys for your time. I hope this helped, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.